Welcome to You Sip, I Sip, a weekly podcast with Northern Lights Winery founder Doug Bell, exploring the experiences from leaders in business, social media, and family. Now here's this week's exceptional guest.
Welcome to You Sip, I Sip. We have Tim Dumas here today, the owner and partner for Jack's Beer, Wine, and Spirits, and also a coach for many business leaders in the province of British Columbia, and I'm assuming quite away from that as well. Now, I'm really excited to talk to Tim because he's had an incredible life experience, and he has a lot of similarities to myself in terms of working with family and learning from a young age what real hard work is about. He has a lot of experience in the wine industry and even some in fruit wines. So we're going to talk about that later as well. Welcome, Tim.
Hey, thanks, Doug. It's great to be with you.
Thanks so much. And I'm drinking our Cuvée Noir. That's our Red Wine Masters blend here. And this is a nice wine to get us set on a smooth day of learning about your past and history. So I want to get us started maybe at a younger age when you just started to get involved in your family's business, but maybe even before that, what lessons you learned, which you use later on when you got involved in the actual day-to-day operation.
Yeah, so I think anytime that you grow up in a family business or in a family that's had family business, you learn a lot of lessons. And certainly I did that at Jack's. We're a fourth generation family business, so I'm generation four, and even potentially moving on to generation five here right now. But so I grew up with uncles and aunts and my parents who were in the family business, and so you really learn, I think what it takes to succeed, and also sometimes what it doesn't. And I learned, from my dad and my uncles about that. It was an all-in thing. It wasn't, working in a family business is not necessarily something you do in the generic 9 to 5 time. It encompassed our lives, and in some ways that's really good because you can balance that. Maybe balance is the wrong word, but you can integrate that with your life. So, my dad was at a lot of our sport events in the afternoon, but he might be at work early in the morning or late at night, integrating that. So there's a lot of great value in family business. And there's a lot of hard things too, because it's hard to turn off when you're always with family. So there's so many great things about a family business. I'm incredibly blessed. I was born into a family business because I learned a lot of great lessons, but there are a lot of hardships and difficult things too, where, that Christmas and Thanksgiving dinner can become a business meeting really quick if you're not careful. So it's hard to turn off. So I wouldn't necessarily have it any other way, but there's certainly lots of pluses and minuses I've had along the way.
Yeah, well, certainly I can relate to that because I started in my family business at the young age of 3. I believe at the beginning I was in charge of toasting buns at Wendy's in Prince George, standing on a milk crate and sweeping the floors for sometimes upwards of 9 hours a day when we had to, and it was all about that family atmosphere. So when you kind of had that, one of the most influential people on you was actually your grandfather. Could you tell us more about him?
Yeah, so my grandfather wasn't even necessarily in the family business. He was a doctor, and he impressed on me a lot of things, and he brought some passions to me that I took to the family business that weren't necessarily in the family business. So one of my earliest memories of my grandfather, he was the team doctor for the BC Lions, my favorite football team, and I really only got into football one day when I was about 5 or 6 years old, and I was watching. My parents were watching the game, and they said, watch the game because you might see grandpa. And so sure enough, some guy gets hurt and I see him trotting out onto the field to attend to this player. And that made an impression on me. And he always had the goal of having one of his children, or maybe one of his grandchildren, one of his 6 children, or more than, or 2 dozen grandchildren, to become a doctor and for him to influence their passions. And that day he influenced my passion. To his dismay, it wasn't the passion of becoming a doctor and working in medicine. It was his passion for football. And from that day on, I was incredibly passionate. And that was the number one thing in my life from since I was 6 to probably the last day I played when I was in my early 20s. And then even to this day, when I still coach teams to this day. So as he saw me grow, though, he used to have he used to have, heart to hearts with me. And he said, Tim, football's a great passion and you can live it and you can really influence a lot of great people. But he said, never forget the most important things in your life. And he said, I know football is important, but the most important things in your life also begin with F, and that's your faith and your family. And lastly, football, never forget, they come in that order. And so from a very young age, I had that upbringing, but I didn't necessarily always have it in that order. I didn't necessarily understand it, but I think as you grow older, you grow in understanding that life is about something bigger than yourself and something greater than yourself, and that's what my faith has become to me. And then secondarily, how I live it out is certainly through my family, and then lastly, in anything else I do, both professionally and personally, and that's where football lays in. But I think I also layered in what I do professionally in coaching, in working professionally, and I think that all ties into who I am as a person.
Do you agree, Tim, that faith, family, and football all have a very similar concept of service of others? And if so, maybe you could expand on that for me.
Well, I think if you look at service of others, I think it's really tying into leadership and what the definition of leadership is, and and really, as I spoke about, something greater than yourself, a mentor of mine, Steve Farber, the author of the book "Love Is Just Damn Good Business," he talks about this greater than yourself project, and when he goes into companies and works with companies on their culture, he asks each person, what's your greater than yourself project? Because if we're in a business just to do something for ourselves or even just to make profit, people don't buy into that. And not only that, that's not only our customers, but also the people that work with us. So, and especially as we go into this Generation Z, or Generation Z as they call it now, they ask us questions when we hire them about, what are the charities you support? What are you doing for the community? What are you doing to make the world a better place? And that's really what gives a business long-standing life, and what breathes the life into a business. So when we look at it and when we put all those things together, for me, as you said, in service, and for me in that faith, family, and football, and for me that really is defining leadership. And I went on uh, I guess a journey of trying to figure out what leadership was many years ago. I got my first job as a leader, and I walked into that room. And as I walked into that room, I had prepared the greatest speech you've ever heard to fire these people up. They were all going to follow me to the promised land. And I gave a great speech, and they all looked back at me and they had their mouths open. They're like, why? Why would I follow you? What I didn't understand was leadership and how to connect with people yet. I was willing to work hard. I was willing to do whatever it took, but I didn't understand what leadership was or what the definition even was. So, as a great child of the 80s, I went to the dictionary and I went to Encyclopedia Britannica, or I went to Merriam Webster Dictionary, and I said, what's leadership? And the definition of Merriam Webster is this: it's the act of being a leader, or sorry, the position of being the leader or act of leading. And I'm like, that doesn't tell me anything. You can't define a word by the root of its word. That tells me nothing. So I went to look at, who are some of the greatest leaders in history? What did they say? And it took me the better part of a decade to find a definition that I really identified with. And it wasn't until I met a guy named Alex Havard, who wrote a book called Virtuous Leadership and the Power of Magnanimity. Yes, magnanimity. I had no clue what that word meant, or I didn't even know how to say it when I first met him. He said, Tim, it's as simple as magnanimity. And the root of that word comes from generosity. But he defined it as this: the spirit of striving for greatness by bringing out the greatness in others. And really, that's what leadership is. And I think when you talk about service and service to others in whatever you do, for me, being in my family or my faith or in football or in my work with Jax or my work with executive coaching, it really comes down to that: is how can I personally strive for greatness by bringing out the greatness in those around me?
So, what are some of the strategies? Because of course, it's different when you're in different groups, right? The Somebody who works for you is going to have different needs, and everyone has a different personality and different desires. And then, of course, you have your family and your children, and you want to kind of strive to help them become the best versions of themselves that is possible. What kind of drives you to do this, and how do you approach it?
Well, I actually think I approach it very similarly to people, my family, my friends, and people that I work with, because I think it's really about being authentic. A leader 100 years ago was somebody different at work than they were at home, and vice versa. A leader today, I think, is authentic, lives with humility and vulnerability, and lives that same way in their professional life and in their personal life. And so, if you saw how I acted in my home life versus how I act at work, I don't really think it would be all that different how I act with my children and how I might lead them versus how I might hope to influence the people that I work with. And I think what it really comes down to is, when we talk about leadership and we talk about lead, there's a few words I think that we hang our hat on when we lead people. Number one in L is love. And number two is energy, E. A, accountable, holding people accountable, and D, and dreaming with them audaciously. So if we take that acronym of lead, love, energy, accountability, and dream, that's really what we do with our kids, right? Or people in our personal lives. To love them, we need to bring energy to the table, help energize them to get pumped up of what they need to do in their lives, go to school so they can go to college or vocational school or whatever they want to do to get a job to live the best life that they could. But we also start with them when we dream with them from a young age. We ask our kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? Is it a hockey player? Is it a firefighter, or what is it? And so from a young age, we get people dreaming. And one of the tragedies in the world is that at the age of 18 or somewhere around there, we try to cut those dreams off of the knees. We say, you know what? You just got to get a job. You just got to get to work. You forget about dreaming. Just start going through life. And that's one of the greatest tragedies of our society. But if we take that same thought process, that same leadership that we have with our families, and we take it to work, and we start loving people, bringing energy and helping to energize them, being accountable and dreaming with them, amazing things start to happen. At Jax, we have dream sessions. So we actually ask people, how can I support you in your personal dreams? Because do you really want to go to a workplace where all I care about is how you can make me more profit? And I haven't met anyone that said, yeah, I'm in for that. Look, the owners of our company are not even into that. Their goals, profit might help them to achieve some of their dreams, put more in their savings account for their kids' college, buy the house of their dreams. That might help them achieve their dreams, but nobody, even the owners of companies, show up just to hit that profitability. That's not their dream. So when we tie in the dreams of our people and we show them that we're going to support them to achieve those dreams, and that the workplace is actually a conduit to that, amazing things happen. Can you think of the connection that we have with each other because of sharing our dreams with each other and helping them to achieve those? Just the other day when we had a dream session, one of our managers, she was struggling a little bit with this dream session. So she said, okay, let's think about this a different way. When you were a child, what was your greatest dream? What did you want to be? The person thought for a while and they said, you know what? I wanted to be Tarzan, but that's really irrelevant to what we're talking about today, right? She said, well, maybe not. Let's think about this for a minute. What was it that you loved about Tarzan? And they said, it'd be cool to live in the jungle and swing from the vines and just be in that environment. The next question then became, have you ever been to the jungle? Would you like to be there? So out of this strange, you might think, line of questioning, this person got re in touch with what their dream was and started to plan out how one day they would take this trip to the jungle. And their boss at work is helping them do that and setting up this 5-year plan of saving to go on a jungle cruise or jungle vacation, and to actually see that jungle that they always longed to be in. And can you imagine the loyalty that's built up, the engagements that's built up between these people, because they show that they truly care about each other?
That's incredible. And I'm assuming that it took you a while to get to this place of energy and to learn all of these concepts. You talked about some of the research you did. Maybe take us back a little bit further. When you were younger, what were some of the things that you did that helped develop some of these skills and mindsets for you? Maybe football or other sports or teams or your church.
Yeah, I think football had a huge impact on my life. And there's a few things in that. When you think about when you go into a football game or other athletic events or even other activities that people do, energy is apparent. If you don't come in and help energize the people around you, you got no chance of winning if there's not some energy around that team going into that field of battle. So certainly that. The other thing was certainly the dreaming piece. Never do you hear a coach say to you, and if ever you do, it's not the coach you want to be around. Never do you hear them say, "That's too audacious of a dream. You'll never make it to the pros." What the coach says is, "Hey, here's some tips and tricks, and here's what you might have to do to get to the pros. Start working on this. Here's an action plan." So, really, what that is very similar to what we would do in the business world today with dream sessions. Here's your dream. Here's an action plan. Let's go after it. The other thing that sports or football taught me is accountability and being able to take constructive criticism. I played college football, and no matter we played on Saturdays, and the day after the game, you go in and you watch the game film. You watch each play multiple times, and you get a grade for each play, all of the 50 some odd plays you might have played in that game. And if you had a great game, you were graded out at like 70%. And that was if you had a great game. So it was really the day of reckoning. You might have had a couple of touchdowns. You might have thought that you played a great game. And when you dissect every moment of every game for the purpose of getting better, that's really where growth happens. So if you couldn't take well, you'll learn to take constructive criticism pretty quickly when the day after every game is that day of reckoning, celebrating your successes and looking at those brutal facts and how you can improve. And I think in the business world sometimes we're afraid to be candid with people like that. We're afraid of how they might take it. One of my mentors named Nancy McKay, who's the founder of McKay CEO Forums, once to me, Tim, she said, "Tim, it's all about love." And love isn't all about rainbows and puppies. Think about when you love your child and they're going to go running, they're running towards the street. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to jump. You might even push them back and they might scrape their knee, but you stopped them from running into the street, right? But when we're in the business world, sometimes we're afraid of saying those hard things that could be taken the wrong way. But if we truly want to grow, that's our only opportunity. I had one manager that I worked with at one time, and we were talking about this concept of love in the workplace. This manager said to me, like, "Whoo, Tim, you know what? I don't think I can be a good manager." And I said, "Wow, that's interesting. I'd love to hear more." He said, "I am just too nice." And I said, "I'd love to hear more about that." This person said, "Well, people are coming in late and I'm just too nice to kind of say anything, something might have happened. I just kind of let it go." And, I'm also too nice where, it was the long weekend coming up and, half of our staff wanted the weekend off. So I gave it all of them all the weekend off. And then the people who are left at work, they were really mad at me because we didn't have enough people to staff the long weekend and it was hard on them. So there's all these things happening. I'm just too nice. And I stared at him. This person stared at me. And I said, "I don't know if that's true. I actually wonder if you're not, to put it bluntly, too selfish to actually say something hard, to have a difficult conversation. If you truly care about each of those people that you work with, you're going to help to hold them accountable to be on time. Because if they can't be on time, they're not going to be able to support the people around them. They're not going to be able to hold down that job. If you don't have difficult conversations with people saying, hey, we can't give everybody the day off because we need other people to work. And if we don't, we're going to really make it difficult for those other people here. It's going to be a problem." So what really happened to this person in hiding behind the nicest and hiding behind thinking that this was love, this person really didn't understand that love means having tough conversations to get to the greatest outcome. And that's really one of the great values in leadership.
I mean, you're talking a lot about candidness, and the other component that's really important is emotional intelligence, right? Understanding each person that is working for you. I often hear from people the term boss, and I just hate that word. Every time I hear it, it's kind of I cringe a little bit because most people are dealing with individuals all day on the premise that as a boss, I am in charge of what you do, and that is the furthest thing from the truth. And in fact, the people that work for us, we really work for them because if we can provide the tools for them to be successful, then they are going to be much more successful. And that is both as an individual and as a team. But there's a great balance, right? Because a team does need a lot of hard love and candidness because you are working, because they are also working for each other. And an individual needs a lot of love and candidness because you want to see them exceed their own expectations in some ways. How do you balance this need to have these kind conversations, yet understand that you can't always give them everything that they desire?
Yeah, so you certainly you're right there. While you can't give them everything that they desire, you can help them with an action plan, and that's really what we can give to people, right? What we can give to people is helping them to dream audaciously and helping them set out an action plan. And I think one of the greatest things that we don't always do in business is actually think about, ask that person, what's the best thing for you? And in some cases, that action plan to achieve great growth for that person might be actually to leave the company, right? When I first had my first job out of university, it was with Ernst and Young, a big accounting firm, right? And they sit you all down, and I think there was about 35 of us that started that year. They had that sort of intake every year. And they said, you know what? Here's the deal: about three of you, 10% will become partners, and 25% will become senior managers, and 40% managers. So our job is to help you find what the right path is for you, and at least half of you will have to leave in 3 to 5 years to achieve those dreams that you have. Because this isn't the right place for everybody, but our what we give you is we give you training, and in turn you give us hard work, and then we help you onto that path that you're chosen to be on. So I really think what our job is as leaders is to support people in that action, and to be selfless and to help them to create that action. Hopefully that's with us, but also knowing that for many people to grow, they'll have to grow outside of us, right? And so that's really where the rubber hits the road in leadership.
So, Tim, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about your journey. And obviously, you didn't always stay with your family company. You journeyed out and you learned a lot from other entities. So maybe some details on that and some of the highlights of how you left and then what brought you back.
Yeah, so I think what anytime you're in a growth phase personally, you're looking for game changers. And I really think everybody's looking for game changers. So one really lucky thing I had, and I think it's one thing that sports and football taught me, is you look to surround yourself with great people. And so I was lucky enough to have coaches that played in the pros and coached in the pros, and surround myself with people that could be game changers for me. And then as I graduated from college and went on, I always had this in the back of my mind that, you're the product of the few people that you hang out with the most. So I continued to search for these game changers. And even to this day, I'm meeting new people every week that could be future game changers. When we surround ourselves with great other thoughts and great other people, great things happen. So for me, coming out of college, it started with Ernst and Young. And moving on from there, I got back into some semblances of the family business, but always looking to network for people that could be game changers. As it's kind of come back to where I am today, there was the next opportunity in the Jack's part of the family business. And as that grew into other game changers, which helped me to become the executive coach I am today, such as, Kevin Lawrence with Lawrence and Co. and his coaches, Dean Ritchie and Tim Shocking. So Kevin Lawrence, as you might know, wrote a chapter in the book called Scaling Up, which is known as one of the basically the business Bible of scaling businesses. So being able to be with those people and game changers, as I grew from that, I met Nancy McKay and McKay CO Forums, one of the greatest business coaches, certainly in this country and probably in the world. So once I started to look at what those people were doing and tried to emulate them, that's when great things happen, not only in my business life, but also my personal life. So, in a short story there's been a long and winding road of always trying to chase game changers. And hopefully along that road, I was giving back as a game changer to others.
Now that makes a lot of sense, and you definitely have accomplished a great amount in a fairly short period of time. I mean, you are still a young guy, but was there anything that, like a tipping point in your life, outside of maybe the coaches and the university football that you played, where somebody stepped up to you and said some of these things about who you're going to meet and how important they are going to be to the future of your life?
Yeah, if I really had to bring that down to one person, I had been doing it for a while, but there's one person that really um, honed in on that term, the game changer for me, and that's Nancy McKay, who I mentioned before, the founder of McKay CO Forums. And when I did coaching sessions with her, every time I set a goal, she encouraged me to state who that game changer might be. And she even encouraged me to dream audaciously about those game changers. She said, that game changer might be someone you don't even know today. It could be the world leader in that pursuit. I challenge you to find the greatest game changer and surround yourself with that person. It's kind of like, I don't know if you've read the book Think and Grow Rich. And I didn't read that book for a long time because I thought it was too narrow-minded. If you're just thinking about riches as it relates to money, and I didn't just want to be a person that chased money, but I met a game changer for me named Paul Martinelli, who's in Florida. He was rated as one of the top 3 global gurus in the world in coaching. And when I talked to Paul, Paul said, "Tim, I want you to read this book." And I said, I don't want to just read a book about money. He said, "Tim, you got to look at this. And every time you read the word rich, think about some of the goals in your life as it relates to your interpersonal relationships, your business, your leadership, and think about what your goal is on your best version of success for yourself. Insert that with riches." When I did that, it changed how I thought about the book and how I thought about life. And in the book, it talks about how people would just go out and find the greatest person, game changer they could think of, and knock on that door until that person answered the door. And so I started to do that with game changers in the customer service area, like Shep Hyken, known as in America one of the greatest game changers. Uh, I just knocked on his door by email and by phone until the guy answered the phone. All of a sudden, he said, "Tim, how can I help?" I did that with Patricia Fripp, one of the foremost speaking experts currently living in San Francisco. All of a sudden, one day I'm in the grocery store, I get a call saying, "Hey, Tim, this is Patricia Fripp." Just because I asked. And now there are also hundreds of people that didn't reply to me. But if you ask enough people, you'll find a person that will be your game changer. The key for me was not giving up and continuing to knock on doors until someone was willing to be that game changer.
Yeah. So you had the tenacity to do that. And obviously, that is a big word in a way, because sometimes when we don't have a lot, we don't know what we can do to get to that next level. But the thing that is a commonality between every single person in this world is that we all have the same amount of time. Doesn't matter how much money you have the same amount of time. And the way you decide to invest your time is absolutely critical in your success, whether that's developing yourself, educating yourself, whether that is spending time going and knocking on doors. Not actually very much different than the way we met, which was through LinkedIn. And I really liked some of your posts, and I learned a little bit about you. And I asked to connect there, and then we got to talking, and here we are today. So those types of things, you never know how many individuals you're going to have to reach out to. But trying to get as close to the sun as possible is critical for you to take that next leap. And sometimes for some people, that's money that can drive that. You can hire a business coach, you can, buy a seat at a table at a big event, or, you can do other things. But I think the simple principle of investing in yourself, whether that be with time, with resources, or with money, is very critical for a lot of people.
Yeah, I certainly think you got to be able to put in the work and do it smartly, but you also have to have that person that's willing to help hold you accountable, right? So I had so many times along the way that I stumbled, didn't do it well, and I had a person in my executive coach, through Lawrence and Co, Dean Ritchie, that would continue on with me. He'd tell me tough truths. Say, Tim, I don't get it. You told me this was your goal. You haven't done anything about it. You set these objectives. Tell me what the truth is if you're not going to work to achieve these. So I had someone who was willing to push when needed, and also give me a proverbial hug when I needed it, right? When I needed to be, consoled and continue to work with. So now that doesn't have to be a coach that you pay, right? Many of us have that in teachers, from high school, in coaches we had from school. It could be a great friend. I have a great friend right now that I have a once a week call with on to do with the book that I'm writing. He's written a book before, and I said, "Will you just call me once a week and say, hey Tim, how's the book going?" And there's some weeks I'm like, "I'm so sorry, nothing happened this week." And he's like, "Tim, don't waste my time." And I don't want to waste his time. He's a good friend of mine. And so I was just able to find that accountability partner. So wherever it is, it doesn't have to cost money. But if you have a goal that you want to achieve, you got to find that accountability partner. Just those days when you're going to the gym and you're going to the gym at 6 a.m. and you want to sleep in, you're probably not going to want to leave your friend hanging there. But if your friend's not there with you that day, you might be willing to hit the snooze button.
You're absolutely right. And many people, though, don't have that person to be accountable to. And so they try and force it on themselves, which is why a lot of times you make the annual New Year's tradition of setting goals that no longer come to fruition. By the end of January, you've already ditched the gym and you're doing something else. Accountability to people is so critical. Maybe you could just touch a little more on that, because I think that's really good focus.
Well, I think there's two pieces. There's accountability, and there's also the ultimate goal that you're getting to, right? So if I'm just going to the gym, and as my New Year's resolution for the sake of going to the gym, I might not continue to do it. But if I can actually tie that to something in the long term that I want to be, do, or achieve, that's when you can actually look to that and say, okay, I'm getting closer to that. So, if I have that goal where at a older age of my life, I want to still be able to run when I'm 80 years old, and I have that mental mindset in the back of my head. I got to continue to keep myself in shape today so I can still run or play with my kids or grandkids at the age of 80 years old. Now, that accountability piece as well is a lot about how the people that we surround ourselves with, right? So there's always those people around us, and there's some people's personalities that's more outgoing and some that's less outgoing. So this is easier for some than others. But making sure to surround ourselves with those people is really how that accountability piece comes forward. And there are all those people in our daily lives that we probably just might need to ask. And we need to go out on that limb and ask somebody to hold us accountable. And there's another piece to that, and that's the piece of just saying it. And so I don't necessarily have anyone that's holding me accountable to a trip I want to take my family on. But when I verbalized that and told my friends, hey, in a year I have this goal of taking my family on this trip, I'm on the hook now because they're going to ask me about it. So I don't necessarily have an accountability partner on that, but I had the audacity to come out and state it. And now once I've said it, I don't want people to tell me I'm a liar or tell me I'm not achieving these things. I'm going to now go out and do it so I don't look stupid.
So, when did you first reinvest into yourself? When did you get your first coach, and why did you choose to do that?
So I was very lucky when I joined Jack's Beer, Wine, and Spirits as a partner 7 years ago, we were going through a big growth phase where we had gone from a company of 3 or 4 stores to now we were going to 6 or 7 to above to now where we're at 13 today. And I was really lucky that one of our partners knew that to really grow to that level, we need to surround ourselves with a coach and a game changer. Now, to that time in my life, while I had really understood coaching and through my time in sports, although, that type of coaching is a little bit different. Once I got into the business world, I had bought into what my mentors in business were telling me, which was set your nose to the grindstone. You don't need to listen to anybody. Just work hard, put your head down, work for 12 hours plus a day, go home and do it all again tomorrow. And, that can get you so far, but it can't get you as far as you possibly could unless you step back one day and actually set talk to those game changers, find those game changers, and set your strategic priorities. So when I had an open mind, when this person came in to speak to us, then when we started doing it, I was like, how have I not known about this for my first decade in leadership? I basically spent actually more than a decade, closer to a decade and a half. And I didn't actually know that this existed. I just went day to day, just working hard and hoping for the best, really on a day to day basis, just buying as many lottery tickets as I could and hoping for the best. But when I saw that, I realized the value in that. And that's when I said, I need to do more of that. And really from that day ago, 7 years ago, I've, I've set an intention to invest in myself some way every year, whether that's a certification program or whether that's doing certain webinars or whatever, reading books, whatever that is. But if I'm not growing, if I'm not what you would say putting my oxygen mask on first, I can't actually put that on others. And it's my great goal in life to help to share that with as many people as I can to help them grow into their version of success.
What does your family think about when you talk about these things? Like how do you approach it with them to obviously help them develop themselves, but also explain why you are doing what you're doing?
Well, I think it's just a part of who I am and who we are as a family, right? Um, I don't think it's a surprise to them because in everything that we do, when I coach my kids in sports, we're talking about what can we do to bring out the best in our teammates and the people we coach. When we're in our family, we're talking about our dreams. How are you going to get to, what's your next dream after high school? What's your dream next year? That's part of our repertoire, if you will. So I really don't think I'm all that different at home than I am at any other time. So um, my family, especially my kids, are pretty are pretty aware of these things, and and they start to live it themselves. It's funny because I'm coaching a group of 14 and 15-year-old boys in flag football, and one kid keeps coming to practice. He says, "Hey, coach, I'm just here to be a difference maker today," right? So he's, listen to things I've said, and this came from a speech or from someone else that I took them to, and but that's the thing that they're starting to talk about. So hopefully, somewhere in their mind, they're going to start to think about this and take that into both their personal life, and and their in their personal life and their professional life.
Yeah. So I can tell you as a young father, I've got a 2-year-old, and I was fortunate enough to be able to coach high school sports as well for about 4.5 years. And one of the things that I really recognize about kids in particular that's so brilliant is how quickly they learn. And so you can try a lot of things and see how people react in a test and learn way, and then change your approach really quickly later on. Whereas when you're speaking with adults, everything takes a little longer, right? Because not because they're not capable, but because people are very resistant to change. Is that why maybe you've got this balance of being able to coach these kids as well as these adults? And do you take the principles from the kids and try and move it forward to the adults?
Well, yeah, I think the principles are the same, but you're right that a 15-year-old kid might not have been hardened by maybe setbacks already that some adults might. So they look at it with more of a critical eye. But the way to support those people as adults is actually to show them your support and ask those questions. How can I support you to achieve what you want to achieve? And when you start asking that question, and you're not going to go in and ask people tomorrow that question, but you're going to start to live it first, right? Live it in how you interact with people, live it in the questions that you ask, live it in how, when you ask somebody how they are, you actually mean it and you actually listen and have a response for that. It's not just, "Yeah, I'm doing fine." So one of the questions I love to ask people and say, "Hey, how you doing?" is, "Hey, what are you grateful for?" And when we change that question, it makes our brain rethink that. And they're like, "Okay, I got to actually think about this. I'm not just going to tell them I'm good, go away." So when they start to think about that, I learn something about them. I usually learn something about their personal life. I'm grateful for my trip to the coffee shop this morning, or I'm grateful for my kids or my cat or whatever that is. And so that really helps connect with people, break down those barriers. And really, if I can show that caring and vulnerability with them, then they'll start to act on that in return. Maybe not right away, but in return. And one of my favorite quotes by Brene Brown is that vulnerability is the birthplace of joy, creativity, belonging, and love. And I still haven't met anyone that said to me, "Tim, I'm looking for less joy, creativity, belonging, and love in my life."
So, how do you take this and now transplant it into the ecosystem of your group of companies? And maybe tell us about some of the struggles you had early on when you were trying to promote these philosophies, but maybe they weren't being taken up immediately.
Yeah, so the first question I had when I said, "You know what, we should do dream sessions with people, and I think it's really going to work. We're going to ask them about their personal dreams and support them." So the first thing is, "Hey, Tim, that sounds like a lot of work. Do I really want to support the people around me in their personal dreams?" And my answer to that is, well, if you're not, there's not going to be a lot of success in your company, because if you're not going to support them, why do you think they're even going to think about supporting you as their employer? Number one. Number two, someone said, "Tim, nobody's ever going to talk to you about their dreams." And in all my time of doing this with hundreds of people, I've had probably one, maybe two people that really didn't want to get into that, and that was maybe as much a part of myself or ourselves as leaders, not showing that leadership enough as it was with them. But 99% of people, let's say, want to share their dreams with you. They're willing to roll the dice, right? If you said to me, "Tim, I'm willing to invest and support one of your dreams, tell me what it is," I'll be like, "I don't really know if this guy can do it or not, but you know what? Why don't I throw it on the table? I really can't lose." And so when they start to think about that, and they're like, "You know what? Nobody else that I've ever worked with or worked for has ever asked me that. Nobody has ever really cared." And then they at least figure out that, you know what? You care enough to ask them what's important to them and how can I support you? And that starts to bring connection. But so when we started these dream sessions, not only did they share their dreams with me, for example, I started sharing my dreams with them, because it's when we have a back and forth, that's when the creativity starts. And they might share a dream with me. I'm like, "Ah, that's pretty cool. I might start thinking about that." And I share a dream with them. They're like, "I never thought that was possible." Because once you start surrounding yourself with those people that dream, you start getting great ideas and you start doing that yourself. And then you actually have a potpourri of these dreams that you can pull from. Which one do I really want to achieve? And you can't pick them all. You got to pick what ones are most important to you. You probably can't go on a vacation and buy the Ferrari all in 1 year. So what's more important? Pick one. And then you start making decisions in your life that are actually that you're taking control. You're saying, "I've made the decision that I'm going to drive a lesser car so I can go on a great vacation," rather than being a victim to circumstance of not having that you know the wherewithal to buy that new car.
That's very profound. I really appreciate you sharing that. I see this all the time with individuals who aren't willing to set their expectations and their dreams high enough. I'm assuming, though, that as a business leader, you've had some hard times as well, where maybe people just weren't able to get on board or were not able to achieve those expectations, and you had to make changes. How do you approach your candidness with them based on that love that you want to show them as well? Because sometimes those hard conversations with individuals who maybe aren't going to work out in your company at all still have to showcase that, respect.
Well, I think the first principle it starts with is principle by John Izzo called the 100-0 principle. That's taking 100% responsibility and making 0% excuses for everything that happens to me always. And I like many people have made just as many mistakes as I've made, as I've made good decisions. But when I take 100% responsibility for everything that happens to me or everything I do and make 0% excuses that was this person's fault or this person's fault, that's when the magic really happens. So when there's somebody in our company that might not be doing as well as they should, I know that 99% of people in this world are trying to do good work. There might be a very small percentage of people that just really don't care, and there's nothing that we can do about it. But 99% are trying to do good work. And it's really up to me as the leader to find the way, the conduit for them to do that good work. So I take it on myself first. I'm like, hey, here's what's happening or not happening. How can I support you to get to that point where we need to get to? And really understanding myself, if I don't do that, I'm not serving them well, number one. But number two, they might not be in a position that will help them succeed in where they're at. So if I don't have that hard conversation, they either might not, do the things they need to do to succeed, or they might also realize, you know what, I'm not maybe in the best job or role that I should be, and I might be able to help them to find that somewhere else. And that's my job, is to help them find that somewhere else, right? And not everyone is meant to be in that specific company. But I really am not loving them if I let them flounder in that role. So I have to help them either move up, or in some cases, I need to help them to move out, but be very clear with them. As another Brene Brown quote, clear is kind. Be very clear with them on the expectations, what they need to do to hit those expectations, and most importantly, how I'm going to support them to achieve those expectations.
So you're also working not only with your own group of individuals, but with your clients. And I'm assuming you've had the opportunity to see a lot of different personalities and a lot of different problems, but there's probably some problems that are fairly common for people, whether they're getting into business for the first time or they've been doing it for 40 years. What are some of those things?
Most common problem for every business leader, and I'd probably argue every person in the world, is time mastery. A lot of people talk about time management. I would call it time mastery. And that's certainly come from my work with Nancy McKay. And because what a lot of people do is they make decisions in their life as far as how they use their time. And sometimes they don't realize they're making a decision. For example, I might mindlessly turn on TV and watch 2 hours of TV tonight. Well, I'm making the decision to watch TV over doing something else. Maybe it's playing with my kids, maybe it's reading a book. And once I take control of all the way that I spend my time during the day, and I look at those times that may or may not be serving me, and look, watching TV at night, that might be a nice way to unwind, right? There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But once I take control of realizing asking myself, what are the different things I could do in my calendar to master my time better, to achieve the goals I want to achieve. And in most cases, when we really look into and dissect what we do every day, when we ask hard questions like, my 1 hour meeting every Monday morning, does that have to be 1 hour, or could that be 30 minutes? How could I utilize the value of executive brevity to cut that down to be more valuable? Would that give me more deep work time? Would that give me the more time with my family that I deeply desire? How would I like to utilize this time? Time mastery is certainly something that we're all striving for daily, and I'm striving to continue to master that. But people often ask, they're like, Tim, okay, you coach people, you do a peer group in K forums, you do speaking engagements, you run a company in Jax. What's the secret to how you're doing more with the same amount of time? And the secret is just look at my calendar and figuring out what are the decisions I need to make to better master my time, and how can I involve those around me to support me in that.
And I assume that that changes often as well, because nothing ever stays the status quo. And there might be times when you need to spend more time with your kids, and there might be other times where you need to spend more time with Jax, and maybe other times where you have the ability to expand your personal coaching business or your speaking engagements. Um, and the judgment of yourself is so incredibly critical as well, because if you decide that you're not doing it right, many people can be very hard on themselves, and they will stop thinking about it in a very logical way. And often we just need to say, hey, we're doing our best and we want to get better. And now, if I say that next week I'm going to spend more time with my kids, I'm not going to regret last week. I'm just going to focus on what I'm doing going forward.
Yeah, I think you can utilize that in your calendar. I'm very religious about how I use my calendar. Almost everything I do is in there. And one person once said, Tim, are you not a slave to your calendar then? I actually found it quite freeing that I have things in there so I don't schedule over them. So, for example, one of the activities I did with my coach was identify the most important things to me and put those in my calendar first. So that was, on whatever the day is, Wednesday afternoon, I'm going to coach soccer at 4 o'clock. So that means I'm going to finish work at 3. I might have to go to work early. I might have to work later a different day. And that's in my calendar. Nothing gets booked in the afternoon on Wednesday afternoon. I'm going to find, time to, if I'm going out for dinner with my wife, I'm going to put in my calendar. Nothing can get booked over that. I might go for lunch with her one day, breakfast, whatever that is. Put those most important things first, and then I can work other things around that. And especially in companies now, most companies are pretty open to a flexible work schedule. So even if you're an employee in a company, many companies would work around things like that. If you said, hey, you know what? It's important for me to take my kids to school once a week. Can I work at 10 after I take them to school at 9? And it's really when you critically look at that calendar and look at that matrix of, there's a great matrix called the Eisenhower matrix, with importance on one side and on one axis, and urgency on another axis. And one of the greatest difficulties people have is they spend most of their time in the urgent and important quadrant, and they spend the second most time in the urgent but not important quadrant, and they never get to the important but not urgent. And when you start to move into the all important, both of the important quadrants, that's when you really start to achieve the goals that you might have set.
Yeah, and of course, dumping the not urgent, not important, because of course those things can fill up a lot of time and a lot of our brain power. Right now, we haven't even talked yet about the customer, and the customer is, of course, the reason why you've been so successful. I shouldn't say that your staff and your team have been the reason you've been so successful, but the customer is an incredibly important point to that. How do you try and approach your team so that they can build relationships with your customers?
Well, I think, Southwest Airlines probably does it best, where they said, you know what, we love our people, and in turn they exude that out to the customer. So when we started doing this with our people, it's funny how and how they start exuding that out to our customers. And when we truly bring in that experience of saying our job is to be experiential to them, and we work for the customer, right? So our employees work for the customer and I work for the employees, right? We have, you mentioned earlier, but we have a little joke that when people get hired into Jax, we have the joke that today is the last day that you work for me and the first day that I work for you. And when we bring that mindset to when I'm dealing with our people, and then they start to bring that to the customer, that's when the magic starts to happen. And it can be difficult sometimes, right? But when we start to have these training programs and really start to identify what our goals are, and our goal at Jax, for example, is not to be the best customer service organization in retail liquor. It's not to be the best liquor store in the country, in the province, or in the world. It's to be the best service organization in the world. So when we compare ourselves, to organizations like Disney and Apple and people and organizations that give amazing service. And so we're continually striving to think about what are the little things that we could do to take it up even a notch from there. And so that's what keeps us going every day to get to that level where we set our expectations so high. And then we tell our customers that, and then they expect it. So I deal with a lot of customers that sometimes didn't receive or didn't feel that they received that experience they'd hoped for. And then I got to go to them and say, hey, the one thing I can always guarantee you is I can't guarantee you no mistakes, but I can guarantee you that we will work on it and take care of it for the next time.
Yeah, and intention is so critically important in any business for sure. So we've covered off a lot today, and before we wrap up, I want to learn a little bit more about what you would like to accomplish in the future and some of your big goals and planning for your company and for yourself.
Yeah, so our purpose and our mission at Jax is to share our passion for people and spirits. And so what we constantly do is try and find ways to do that even better and more so with our people, and then out to our customers, our guests, and then out to the greater community. So certainly for that, we'll continue to grow at Jax in number of stores as we grow into the future. For me personally, it's to take some of these principles and help other organizations and other executives and leaders to bring this out to the people that they live and work with, and really taking out that dreaming audaciously piece, to love unconditionally by dreaming audaciously. And when we realize that, understand what we need to do, and it's that love, that energy, that accountability, and that dreaming. And people ask me, like, Tim, what do you need to do to create that energy? And a lot of times it's checking myself at the door and saying, hey, I got to show up at the next meeting with energy, and I got to figure out how to do it because I'm not feeling it today. And it's not necessarily about feeling it, it's about doing it. And so I got to figure out in myself and take 100% responsibility of myself, knowing that what's expected of me at that next business meeting is to bring the energy so other people can feed off it. When I do strategic planning with other companies, that's what they expect. And I got to figure out how to do that. If that takes 6 cups of Starbucks in the morning, that's what I got to do. If that's some kind of daily meditation, that's what I got to do. And once we internalize that on ourselves, that's when our organizations can get truly great. And I hope to take that out to the world, to love unconditionally by dreaming audaciously.
Well, you're doing a very great job of it. Now, if anyone wants to catch up with you, where's the best opportunity for them to find you?
Yeah, certainly finding me on LinkedIn, just as you did, is a great way to find me. You can go to my website, which is serviceleadership.com. Service is spelled Servus. It's the Latin word for servant. And those are probably the best ways to connect with me. I love to connect with new people. And as it relates to connection and game changers, here's one quick story about that. About 10 years ago, I had a friend that said, Tim, I want to connect you with another business leader. And I said, great, who is it? They said, this person's an artist, like a person that paints pictures, paints on canvas. And I said, I'm not really an artsy kind of guy. I have art on my wall, but like what value are we going to receive from each other? And this person said, Tim, you got to open up your mind. If you show up with an open mind, you will receive value from anybody you meet in the whole world. And hopefully, and if you come with the same mindset, they'll receive value from you. So I went into this meeting. This person became one of the greatest connectors that I had ever met. And my mindset was originally closed to that. So since that day, I have realized that every connection can be amazing if I solely show up to the connection, to the meeting with them, stating, how can I add value to you and other people that you know, with no strings attached in return? And generally, they'll start asking me that question, and that's when great things happen.
Well, that's incredible and a great message. And I just love everything that you're doing. I appreciate it so much. We've learned a ton from you. And Tim, I hope to talk to you soon. This has been another episode of You Sip, I Sip. This is Doug here signing off, and I can't wait to see you next week. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to You Sip, I Sip. Please hit the 5-star rating and leave us a review. If you'd like to learn more about Northern Lights Winery, text us at 604-670-4046 or visit us on social media at Northern Lights Winery.